So we are live. Um, it is my once again distinct pleasure to welcome a excellent guest expert onto the show tonight. We have Dr. Stuart Armstrong of Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute and the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, and a whole bunch of other fascinating places that want to get him to work. But fortunately, for a short term this evening, I have him all to myself. So thank you very much for coming on, Stuart. Uh, he is one of the world's leading experts on AI risk and also, I think, on AI reward and the potential opportunities that it might provide for us. Um, so, just as a quick introduction for those who might not be quite as in on the, Oxford, Stanford kind of clique, uh, what is well, first of all, what's the difference between AI as it stands today, the YouTube recommendation algorithm and so forth, versus what people are talking about when they're talking about the really powerful kind of generalizable AI?
Well, thanks for having me on.
Sorry, that
And
was
to
that
an-
was I didn't really give you a chance to intro. First of all, is there anything you'd like to introduce? Sorry, I'm excited about the questions.
um, no, you've launched me onto the
Okay, cool.
question,
Let's
so
go into the questions. We'll chat about that
um,
later.
because I'm going to have to answer that simple question with a medium digression.
Go ahead.
Um, Basically, what AI meant used to be clear. Sort of say in the 80s, the 70s, and before. It's the Asimov thing. It's the robots. It's the machine with the skills and intelligence of a human in silicon, basically. And then you had the AI winter, and then more recently we had the explosion of deep learning, and something very odd happened. It turned out that a lot of things that we thought could only be done by a general intelligence that could do pretty much anything could be solved by narrow intelligences. Like you had Jeopardy, Watson, the AI, or Watson, the algorithm, triumphed on Jeopardy using basically very narrow skills. They've tried to retool Watson for medical purposes, but I haven't really heard of much success there, and it's taken years in any
Mm,
case. So Watson's very narrow intelligence managed to triumph on a game seemed to require knowledge of wordplay, lots of common sense, and background knowledge about the world. And then we got self-driving cars that, again, people were saying could only be done with a general intelligence because you need to interpret everything of what's going on and the meaning of all that stuff. And again, with deep learning techniques and other similar ones, we found that we can have very performing narrow intelligences that don't have the slightest trace of generality. But the name stuck. So all these things are now called AI because that's what people were doing before. They thought that to drive a car, you needed an AI. Now we have a self-driving car, so you may as well call it AI, and so on. So the term doesn't really mean all that much anymore. When I think about it in the old sense, the general intelligence, the algorithm with multiple skills in different areas of human endeavor.
So, when you say general intelligence, uh, you're talking about lots of different processes that function in unison in order to give a flexibility that's greater than the narrow focused AIs we have now. Is that a kind of fair?
Um, I'm not talking about the processes or the internal design. I'm
Mm,
talking about the outcomes, the skills. I'm talking about the human ability to be confronted, to take a brain evolved for the savannah and do taxes on an Excel spreadsheet with it, or to design a computer and to move from that to social skills, to moving about in the world. That sort of ability, cross domain optimization. I think it was Marcus Hutter. I'm not sure who said that. Basically, the ability to be decent in many different environments, facing many different challenges.
Okay. So why is it that you and many others, but me included, are both so concerned and excited about the potential futures that these technologies might offer us?
Well, first of all, I want to emphasize there's a huge amount of uncertainty. Um, we don't know about what AGI, the general intelligence or AI, when it might come, what form it might take, what power and skills it might have. And people's track records at predicting this have been rather bad. I've been looking at a lot of predictions. And the most recent one that just came out, I looked at Kurzweil's predictions
Mm.
20 years ahead for 2019, and over half of them were very wrong. And I'm not picking on Kurzweil because he uniquely had the guts to write down his predictions and spell them out in some detail. Anybody else's predictions 20 years ahead would have been far worse. And I've seen a lot of different predictions. So, given all but the other important thing is that uncertainty is not reassuring. Uncertainty might mean it might take forever to get a decent AI that might be pretty terrible at everything. But uncertainties also might mean we might be on the verge of getting an extremely powerful AI imminently, so that it sort of spreads out the possibilities. And I've chosen to focus on the near term powerful AI just because that makes the most sense to focus my attention on. If I find something that works in that case, it's going to probably work in most situations. Now, the AI risk thesis is quite simple to spell out. It's that AIs may happen, they might be very intelligent, and as a consequence, they might be very powerful. And if they are very powerful, then the world will come to resemble what is high in their preference ordering. And therefore, they, in a sense, would control the future. And it is very hard to actually design a goals or preference ordering or even a system to contain them that ensures a tolerable or survivable outcome for humanity. You basically, it's like small errors don't matter for a weak AI. Like if you have a spam filter and you just want it to filter spam, that's fine. If it becomes extremely powerful, it might find it that it's in its interests to shut down the internet and take control of all the spam generators and filter it perfectly, just as a consequence of the simple goal filter spam. And it turns out that most goal designs are like that. They're okay for a weak agent and extremely dangerous for a powerful agent. And we're making progress, but it's not trivial.
So just brought it up on screen now. Stuart's post about Kurzweil's predictions. This was a couple of days ago. Would very much recommend. It's an interesting read. As you say, Kurzweil has a pretty respectable track record as these things go, but even you know someone who is regarded as being a very competent futurist gets a lot of things wrong, um, and the sheer range of outcomes that could occur from any technological development is very wide. But when it has the potential to be so powerful and so generalizable, then it becomes very difficult to predict. So the question seems to become, how do we ensure that the preferences of the artificial intelligence or whatever very powerful agents we construct are aligned with not only our current preferences but our preferences if we had infinite time to think about them and were way, way smarter, or at least a lot of time to think about them. Um,
I actually think that in a sense the second part is somewhat easier. Um, I often describe my objective as well, I'm looking for an adequate goal system. I'm not looking at all for perfection.
mm,
So I need to, in a sense, sorry, me, that sounds right. Humanity or the people working on this problem need to, in a sense, solve
mm.
all philosophical problems of the last several thousand years and put them all into code. So wildly huge ambition, but on the other hand, hopefully relatively low standards because we don't need to get it perfect. We just need to get it okay. So
Mm.
actually moving from getting to okay, I think is the biggest part of the job. Getting from okay to fantastic or perfect is is a good part of the job, but it's not. It's much easier once you've done the first half.
So, like with self-driving car AI, we don't need them to never crash. We just need them to crash less often than human drivers. Is that a kind of
Um, in a sense, let's see if I can develop the analogy. Um, getting um, getting to the point where you have a car that can go around a roundabout 10 times and only crash once, which is terrible for from human perspective. But getting to that point is almost all of the work of self-driving cars.
mm.
Then getting the self-driving cars to not crash nearly as often as humans do is sort of just refinement on top of that.
So we saw that with with the development of AlphaGo, didn't we? In terms of it went from Go is a problem that's almost never go, that's going to take decades to solve by AI, to we can beat a competent Go player, to 6 months later beating the world champion. Um, I wonder if
Uh,
that's a process that
well,
we'll see in other fields, other domains of AI.
unfortunately, I am an academic, which means I tend to sort of put caveats to everything. I think things like Go actually don't really show
Okay.
that pattern as strongly. I think that AlphaGo arrived earlier than most people were expecting, but not that
Mm.
much earlier. And its performance was decent. Its increase in performance was all impressive. It was good, but it was not sort of superlative. Um, I would say it's actually a domain in which there was a steady build up that then
Okay.
got a bit faster, but it didn't wasn't a sort of phase change.
Oh, interesting.
But ignore what I'm saying. As I said, I'm an academic, so everything has to be
No, no,
qualified.
that's the kind of conversation I'd like to have on here, getting into the nitty-gritty a little bit. So please do. Oh, sorry, just a sec. Okay, right. Welcome to this evening's stream, everyone. This is the second welcome I'm doing because a technical mess up very embarrassingly caused me to not actually be broadcasting for the last 15 minutes or so. So we have with us this evening Dr. Stuart Armstrong from the Future of Humanity Institute, who is an excellent AI researcher looking at AI risk and all kinds of interesting stuff in there. The full sort of director's cut of this interview will be going up on
Mm.
YouTube after the fact. Um, but for now, we're going to kind of hop directly into the conversation. So to briefly catch up, we're talking about human level artificial intelligence, or artificial general intelligence, as it's sometimes known. And we're talking about it's a hugely powerful technology, as you've probably seen from just the modern world and how it's developing, but also the kind of scare stories and exciting stories about how much promise and threat it potentially offers. So we're good. Okay, so my stream's actually coming through now. That would be an advantage. Um, so uh, we were discussing the um, the potential power that AI offers and how it how we're developing kind of a more useful implementation of it and how that might cause risk. So, um, sorry to interrupt you, Stuart. You get back to telling us interesting things. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so what were we?
So
Where
I
were
think
we?
we were on Go and so
Yes.
shall we'll jump off from Go. So yeah.
Um, yes. Well, to repeat just a little bit from the
Yeah.
director's cut, we've the term AI is now applied to narrow intelligences that are skilled at one thing, whereas before it used to be for general intelligences that were supposed to be skilled at pretty much everything. And AlphaGo remains a narrow intelligence skilled at one thing. And that was progressing faster, definitely faster than the Go computers before it, but not unusually faster or not inconceivably faster. Um, it's a like the like getting breaking another high altitude flight record rather than going to the moon.
Okay. So how do researchers go from these current narrow AI systems that perform often superhumanly in a very specific field? So, visual search AI has gotten very, very good at finding specific objects over massive data sets in a way that no human could ever do, but can't tell you how to, make a cup of tea or very simple tasks like that. It's extremely, extremely focused. So, how are researchers looking at moving from the narrow set to being able to more broadly solve problems?
Well, most researchers are not, is the simple answer. There are some people who are still trying to build general intelligences the in a sort of somewhat old-fashioned way, but most of the energy and money at the moment seems to be in developing various narrow skills that are commercially useful. You seem to have vanished.
Yep, I'm just coming. There we go. Yep.
Okay, but and probably the closest that we have would be transfer learning, and to a lesser extent, avoiding catastrophic forgetting. So transfer learning is when you get an algorithm to learn in some domains and transport what they've learned to other ones. I believe I haven't been keeping up, but I believe they were testing that on the Atari games as usual, and they found that if you trained on some Atari games, it could learn on others.
I saw that.
Uh,
Yep.
and That's, I think, the closest we are to a path towards general intelligence at the moment. So generalizing by in that way, and there's a variety of things that are sort of of a similar nature. The avoiding catastrophic forgetting is just basically not losing a skill when you learn a new skill. So it's a sort of even more basic level of getting a general intelligence.
So it seems that we are quite a way off in terms of both conceptual underpinnings and the actual implementation of it, from being able to create, something that is able to do everything just as well as a human and better. But you were talking earlier about the contribution of risk to or uncertainty, sorry, to this development. Um, could you talk maybe a bit about how we might give rise to a massive leap that could cause potentially some disruption?
So my 90% confidence interval for AI of some sort is 5 to 100 years at the moment. And I feel it might be too narrow, but I have narrowed it. That used to be my 80% confidence interval. Um, but it's the basic idea is to do with power. Humans have great power over the world because of our intelligence and our social skills, and that therefore it's just sort of in a sense extrapolating. AIs could be developed, will be sort of by definition, if they're general intelligence, smart. We can run them very fast. We can copy them at will. We can network them together. So they'll probably be superhumanly intelligent if ever we get them to human-like intelligence. And then with that superhuman intelligence, they will probably become very powerful directly, either for themselves or for their controllers. And if they become that powerful, then the world will start to resemble what their preferences are. And I wouldn't be optimistic of any controller staying in control of a machine that can root around them. In a sense, for some inexplicable reason, the Terminator has become the icon of AI risk, when the Terminator is an idiot, is probably the easiest way to say it. It's it's a armored bear. It's a big burly thing that's hard to kill, and that's about it.
Mm.
The real dangerous robot would be the one that could walk into the bar and walk out with all the men or women on its arms just through chatting them up. The one that would actually be smarter than us in key domains.
And I think it's worth remembering there that that kind of key domains is a pretty critical part of the equation, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a genius at quantum physics in order to be capable of picking up everyone in the bar and having a massive social advantage on us. As long as it's got some competency in a wide range of domains and is superhuman in at least one, it still has the potential to be very, very powerful indeed.
Yes. So I want to estimate that this is not sure, but I don't think the risk is comfortably low. That's why I've decided to work on this. I have a very small chance of solving a very something that has a medium chance of being a huge problem.
And when you multiply those out, very small times medium times really, really big turns out quite large still. Um, and yeah, I think that we've got, given how much the world has changed and how much economic value has been produced by these very, very dumb AIs, AI that's barely intelligent by our terms, but is very, very good at one specific task. Um, Being able to make that more flexible, being able to write one program that can, you know, do your dishes and your taxes and mow the lawn and so forth, is an extremely strong economic incentive. And I think it's always unwise to bet against human desire to make money and to become, the leader in a field. So I think we should probably give at least reasonable credence to, if it's possible to develop AI, that it's going to happen. Um, so,
I mean, we know it can happen
well, of
because
course, there's
it has happened because humans exist. So we have an existence proof. Um, Now, it took billions of years, but it was but done by evolution, which is basically an idiot with a huge bandwidth. We're much smarter, but much narrower than evolution. So, yeah, and even there is a certain concept called whole brain emulations.
Mm,
The idea being that you could get a human brain and run it forward according to the laws of chemistry or the laws of physics if you needed to go down to that granularity. And unlike other ways of building an AI, this is one that is guaranteed to work if you can do all the technical challenges that will eventually be solved if you throw enough effort at it.
mm.
This is probably a sort of 80 or 90-year endeavor in normal circumstances, but it's a path to AI that is, in a sense, guaranteed to work, or almost guaranteed.
Mm. Indeed, and even if we leave aside the question of whether such an entity would be conscious, I suspect it would. David Chalmers would probably argue that it wouldn't. Um, we can probably all agree, at least all of us who aren't like hardcore old school duelists, that such a machine, if we literally just reproduce every step that the brain goes through, is at very least going to be intelligent and is going to be capable of exerting its will on the world in a similar kind of way to how, or if you're emulating every step perfectly in an identical way to how humans do. Um,
Except this entity can also be potentially run much faster and with many, many, many more copies. So you can get a level of superhuman intelligence out of these sort of entities that you can't get from sort of biological brains.
I think that's a particularly interesting point because even if, so I don't personally think there's any reason to suspect that the human brain has somehow found the maximum level of intelligence capable in any one entity in the universe. That would be quite arrogant of us, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
even if that is some kind of limit, being able to run many of these emulated brains simultaneously and have the communicate, as you say, might be its own form of superintelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, given that we can at least reasonably assume for the purpose of the discussion that AI is possible, or human level AI is possible and will come at some point, whether it's you know in half an hour or in 1,000 years. Uh,
I think half an hour is relatively unlikely.
okay, okay. Well, I'll plan ahead for my tea then and continue with that. Um, but if even if it is 5 years, which um, hopefully going to be a bit longer than that, but if that is the kind of time frame we're dealing with, it's going to be a complete disruption of society. So hopefully it's going to be a little bit longer. I say it's going to be a complete disruption of society because it might be the case that AI, human level AI, is going to be hard to control. So what makes it difficult to control? You said earlier that that its preferences may well end up overriding our own. Why is that?
Well, it's mainly human preferences are much more complicated than we think. Let's pick one example almost at random, say respect. You want to say, well, someone should show respect to their elders, to their superiors, or to those who deserve respect, or it doesn't really matter, but just the concept of respect. This is a immensely complicated thing to do with behavior, with attitude, and circumstances, and how you behave. So, if you if you respect someone, should you give them a lot of money? Probably not. But in certain circumstances, it is okay, but in other circumstances, that's actually insulting and disrespectful. So actually sorting out what something like respect, which isn't particularly central to most people's lives that much as compared with other emotions, it's very complicated. It's a product of evolution that doesn't make any particularly strong sense. Um, and we don't realize how complicated it is because we're instinctively skilled at dealing with it. That's what most of our brain is for. Um, Social skills are harder than quantum physics in any objective sense of the matter. The only reason we find it the other way is because our brains are evolved for social skills and not for quantum physics. So the what we value has lots and lots of different components. I gave the example of the sort of spam filter. You program something to filter spam. It starts by filtering spam, then it figures out how spam is made, then it takes down the websites or whatever that make spam. We then try and stop it from doing that. It's still on its spam filtering mission. If it gets turned off, it won't be able to filter it as much. So it shuts us down and takes control of the internet. And now it can filter spam. Now, obviously, when we said filter spam, we meant filter spam, but don't be stupid about it. And the whole don't be stupid about it, if you think about it, includes almost all of human values and preferences. It means don't sacrifice the Eiffel Tower in order to filter spam. Don't take control of world politics. Don't cause this disruption. It's basically when you do when the entity gets more and more powerful, the possibility for error gets higher and higher, and we need to specify more and more of the stuff that we understand instinctively, but that we can't write down because it is so complicated. So that's the sort of problem with trying to specify goals directly. There are a whole host of ways of specifying goals indirectly, and I'm pursuing some of them, and hopefully that some of them might work out. But the basic idea is a variant of the genie that gives you what you said rather than what you want. And it turns out that this is basically the default. Every single thing that you can think of saying will will almost always end up disastrously if you put great intelligence and power behind that.
So, how might we start thinking about making an AI not only not building in the goals to start with, but making it such that it learns and wants to learn what our goals are and continue enacting them?
Well, there's the current sort of hot topic is so-called inverse reinforcement learning, which is basically looking at experts, i.e., humans, looking at what we do and deducing from that what we want. There is a problem, and I hope you won't require me to do a citation, but it turns out that humans are not always completely rational in every single thing that we do.
I don't know
Shocking,
about
yes.
that.
Uh, and then I showed that there is actually a no free lunch theorem in this area, that you cannot deduce the preferences of potentially irrational agents, i.e., us, just by observing them, even just by observing their interior makeup. You have to make assumptions in order to get the behavior. And most no free lunch theorems are not that applicable because you apply simplicity or regularization and they go away. This one turned out to be one that gets worse with simplicity or regularization. The simplest explanations of human behavior are that either we are fully rational in every single thing we ever do, we are fully anti-rational in every single thing we ever do. We always pick the worst possible choice, or we actually have no preferences. Our preferences are flat and zero. Those are the three simplest explanations of human behavior. Obviously, that's not what we want. So, having shown that this could not be solved in theory, I'm now around to trying to solve it in practice. So, what this is means bringing in the assumptions. What is the minimum amount of assumptions that we need so that the AI can look at humans and give us or figure out something that we want. By the way, I use want, preferences, values, goals, and things like that relatively indistinguishably when talking about humans. Um, these are they're all sort of different preference orderings over outcomes or situations. We we want this more than we want that. It might be that we value it, we might prefer it, we might aesthetically value it. So there's different types of preferences for humans, and the different types are also relevant, and I put them in meta preferences. But ultimately, they're all of the same sort of thing. This better than that.
Yeah. So how do we? So say let's say we make an AI that is capable of identifying human preferences with some reasonable level of accuracy. As you were saying earlier, it doesn't have to be perfect, just good enough, and then we can kind of build up from there. Um, but assuming we manage to do that, what's to stop it changing its preferences later on? What's to stop it deciding to override those preferences? How do we make sure that it keeps wanting to want what we want?
Ah, this is where the fact that it's an AI turns from a drawback to an advantage. So remember the example of filtering spam. If ever I told a human to filter spam and gave them great powers to do this, and they took over the world, we know that they were deliberately misinterpreting what we told them. They got corrupt, they got power hungry, or they had other goals. But we know that the human understood fully what we intended and deliberately chose to ignore it. The AI, getting it to fully integrate what we intended is a very difficult thing. But once that's done, there is no reason, unless it's a very odd AI design, there is no reason that it would have human weaknesses, that it would be corruptible, that it would have any excess amount of self preservation, even, that it would want power for its own sake rather than just as an instrumental goal. So, and there's no reason that it would want to change its preferences because its preferences fight against this. Let's just take the simple spam filter example. Suppose it was filtering spam and it could say, well, I might rewrite my preferences so that I don't filter spam in the future. Let me check this. This results in less spam being filtered. Let me check this by my current motivations. Is it okay to do this, which will result in less spam being filtered? No? Okay. Then I won't. So goals goals that are expressed as reward or utility functions have an intrinsic stability, not perfect, but have an intrinsic stability to them that other sort of goals don't. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that I look to build utility or reward functions, not because I'm particularly enamored of them, but because other types of goals tend to be unstable and then will morph towards a utility function in an unpredictable way. And hence, there's no, it's better to sort of know where we're going to end up than to hope. Like, just to pick an example, one sort of thing. So, people have thought of ways of restricting AIs by, for example, restricting the amount of energy or computer cycles that it has access to. So its goals are now solve this problem with this many computer cycles. And then the question that I ask is, Well, can it, given these restrictions on energy or materials or computer cycles, can it build a sub AI that wants to solve the problem but that doesn't have the restriction? If it can do that within the restrictions that we've given it, then it's basically escaped it. It
Mm.
has created another agent without those restrictions. The issue here is that those restrictions are not phrasable in a sort of reward or utility function way. It's and therefore can be evaded in these ways. So there is a bit. There's always a lot of complication and nuance, but basically, goals that are reward functions, utility functions, tend to be extremely stable, and the AI tend to fight to keep it that way.
But that seems to raise the problem of what if it gets set with the wrong goals? What if we either make a mistake, or it develops in a way that we don't expect? How do we get
Run
it
for the
back onto our...
hills, except that won't save you. No, yeah. So that is a problem. So that's the counterpart. It's we don't need to worry about it being corrupt. We need to worry about it being extremely dedicated to the wrong goal.
So say if, to pick an example completely at random, say you were a staple company or paperclip company and wanted to produce a lot of paperclips, and you tell your AI,
I
make me
don't
as
like
many.
the
No?
paperclip
Okay.
maximizer idea because I've heard people say, "Well, that's an idiot. That's idiotic. No
Mm.
intelligent being would just want to produce paperclips." I prefer to use the money maximizer
Okay, because
that's
you can do
dedicated
anything with money. Yeah.
obsessively to maximizing money, because for some reason, people are less likely to say, no intelligent being would want to just maximize money. That's a behavior that just doesn't exist. But
That's an excellent point. I shall have to use that.
yeah, so if you have the I this is sort of part of my old research.
Mm.
I was looking at interruptibility, corrigibility, and sort of or indifferent agents. There's slight different nuances there, but the basic idea is a AI that accepts updates of its preference functions from us without trying to interfere in either direction. You want it to neither force a change nor resist a change. And so that's sort of an old problem that's semi-solved, i.e., it's solved, but the solution has lacks certain properties that you would like it to have.
Right. Okay. So, so you did mention there sort of the prospect of our updating its preferences. Uh, so this seems kind of tied in with the idea of having an off switch, which is the first classic suggestion that most people thinking about this for the first time will go for. Like, if the AI is going to be scary or could go bad, why don't we just have an off switch to flick for when things get too worrying? Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to work out quite as well as we'd like it, for various reasons. But why is it that that probably won't work, but being able to update preferences uh, will plausibly work?
Well, actually, the original thought about the updating preferences was about getting an off switch that kind of worked.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
um, the original idea was to make the AI indifferent as to whether the off switch was ever pressed or not. So that so the main problem with an off switch, it's sort of similar. Why doesn't someone press the off switch? Why did no one shoot Hitler?
Mm.
I mean, killing a human is not too hard. It's not quite as easy as an off switch, but it's still relatively easy. Why did no one do it? Well, because there was a whole infrastructure of humans around it, blah blah blah, that would have stopped you, and so on. So similarly, an AI that becomes extremely powerful, say it gives economic advice that countries and governments rely on. At this point, its off switch is almost irrelevant
mm,
because these powerful entities are not going to let anyone press it. Um, so, and this also ignores the fact that AIs, unlike humans, might be able to be copied quite effectively. So, if it ever gets an internet access, even indirectly, it might spin off a copy of itself um, anywhere. And at that point, the off switch for the original copy is kind of pointless. So that's the reason why the off switch is less effective than changing its values.
okay.
Uh, because if you want, one of my tests for a new AI safety idea is, does this pass the subagent test? Um, and an off switch does not, because if there's a subagent, it won't have an off switch. The change its goals, kind of. Remember, I said that it didn't have all that nice
Mm,
properties. It kind of passes the subagent tests, it kind of doesn't, but it's still, you can do it so that it's more likely that your change of goals will be transmitted all the way down
mm,
to all the copies as well, whereas the turn it off button won't. Of course, if we could define a utility function based goal that is turn yourself and any copy of yourself off, um, this would be a lot easier. But it's, I don't think that that actually can be defined.
mm,
Just to give an example, if the AI gives a very moving speech that affects a lot of people, then it has made maybe millions of humans slightly into its subagents, in a sense. So, how do you undo something like that?
I was just about to ask in terms of making it fall in love with people. What was the Joaquin
That is a
Phoenix
terrible,
thing?
terrible, terrible idea.
Well, I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying if the AI decided to try to use that as a strategy for preventing anyone from turning it off, um, what if you come along
Oh, okay.
in 50 years'
Maybe
time?
humans fall in love with the AI.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was imagining for a moment an AI in love with humans. Imagine a entity with all that power,
Oh no, no, that.
obsessively in love.
No, no, that's definitely a bad idea. No, I was thinking in terms of the AI using it as a, okay, Stuart Armstrong wants to turn me off. He's this, going to come along and sap my computational resources, so I can't make my money or build my paper clips anymore. Well, I know I'm going to make everyone else at the Future of Humanity Institute fall in love with me, and then they're going to apply social pressure and so forth to get him to quit his research and go live on a desert island so he won't threaten me as the AI. Um,
Yeah, so
and
you can deploy social power. You
yeah,
can deploy financial power. Um, we will fund a brand new institute as long as Stuart isn't part of it. But probably nothing so crude,
mm,
but you can do sort of a lot of subtle things. Uh, Political power, rhetorical power. There's a lot of different avenues potentially. Now, there is a chance that you might get diminishing returns,
mm,
and that sort of extremes of power and or intelligence at least does not become extremes of power. I wouldn't bet on it, but it is a possibility. Um, but I think it is more likely that extreme intelligence, especially social intelligence or financial intelligence, will be translated into extremely high power.
yeah, I certainly buy that. If only in terms of, if we can imagine a day trader who has basically the same cognitive capabilities as, a kind of top of their class, but not incredible, sort of financial analyst in real life, except they also had immediate access to the knowledge of what every company in the world, what their stock price is doing, and recent news articles related to them. I would suspect that day trader would have a substantial advantage over his peers, just in terms of that one cognitive domain that he's or that they are highly capable in.
Now,
That's just my intuition, but sorry.
yeah, no, I agree. But human society is set up to, in a large extent, not allow um, skills or powers in one area to become too dominant.
Mm,
Like, definitely the rich have a lot more influence than the rest of us, but they don't. Someone who is a million times richer than me does not have a million times more influence than I do, and the extreme disparity of money does not translate
I
linearly into
see.
an
Yeah.
extreme disparity of power. Like, rich people cannot go around literally shooting people in public and get away with it.
Depends on if you're in Fifth Avenue and become the president later, but yeah.
No, no, but the Trump thing is wrong. He could not do that. He can do things that are equivalent to that and has done, but the actually literally um, because of the way our sort of disgust and laws and things like that
Mm,
are set up, there are things that rich people just cannot do. There are other things that it is difficult for them to do, and then there's some ways in which they have power that we can't stop. But the point is that a lot of human society is designed so that the person who comes up with this great new invention does not become ruler of the world.
mm,
Um, Even if it might be sort of, in a sense, rational or fair or even sort of, yeah, honorable to make Borlaug, who did the Green
mm,
Revolution, or Jenner, who invented smallpox vaccine. In a sense, it might be fair if they were ruler for the world at least a little bit, seeing how many lives they saved. But both in the positive and the negative thing, a lot of human society is set up to basically not have society overthrown. But it's not clear that these tools will work against non-humans, and even against humans, they work imperfectly.
yeah, that's an interesting point. I suppose if that's the case, if very high levels of skill in one domain, or very high levels of capacity in one domain, don't necessarily lead to wider power, then uh, we would have to have that. I'm not sure if I'm coining term, but general superintelligence as opposed to something that's kind of human level but super intelligent in one domain. Um, we might require an AI that is super intelligent in many domains in order to get that kind of society dominating position, perhaps.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, we have billionaires, we have
Mm,
multi-billionaires. Um, but what would happen if we had a multi-trillionaire who had no that we didn't know about, say? So
mm,
this day trader, they make their trillions discreetly, squirrel it away in various shell companies or whatever, and now they can move this money without drawing attention to themselves.
mm.
So is is society built to withstand this kind of financial disparity? Um, and how much actual intelligence would a human need to transform that much financial power into a large amount of social or political or other forms of power?
That's
So
interesting.
it's again sort of academic, and there are uncertainties and there are different ways things can happen. But I want to say, I want to sort of point out that it is very possible that an AI becomes massively powerful in the world in a way that humans cannot resist. It is also possible that a super intelligent AI becomes somewhat powerful but contained within a larger system, without causing too much problems. I think the second is a bit less likely than the first, or I go back and forth on things like that. It really depends on how much design we manage to put into it. But I want to point out that there are multiple scenarios, and that I'm not working on this because I think super powered, super intelligent AI is inevitable, and that it's inevitable that it's dangerous. I just think that the probability of it happening and the probability of it being dangerous are both disturbingly high enough that I can't ignore it.
I think that's a really important point, and it's something that it's generally very difficult to communicate to the public, this nature of
Hello, public.
high public, yeah, of kind of high risk, high reward um, stuff, because you say I'm working on super intelligent AI, and you'll get a lot of people going, it's never going to happen, just kind of doubting it reflexively. Um, but even if you recognize that it's, or even if you believe that it's quite unlikely to happen, the sheer scale of the impact, in the same way as in any given year, it's very unlikely that the nukes start flying. There are a whole bunch of safety procedures and so forth. We can question them, but and political procedures in place to stop an all-out nuclear war. But the consequences of it would be so bad that we should put a lot of resources into trying to overcome it. Um, with
Nuclear war bad. This
Yeah, this is the
special
hot
message
take.
brought to you.
Post-normal streaming and the Future of Humanity Institute. I think this a message we can all get behind. Um, but I'll just check, how are you doing for time?
Um, I'm probably getting a bit burnt out.
Okay, no worries. In that case, let's um, let's maybe wrap it up with if you're right to continue briefly with a quick discussion of, you mentioned earlier, kind of the idea of containing an AI within a domain, it being contained by its ability to act upon the world. Um, so, in sort of formalizing that, is there a way that we could contain an AI not just within a kind of a general domain of action, but within uh, a box or a cage that prevents it from enacting its will upon the world indiscriminately, but still allows us to usefully access it? Is that a viable
Ah,
strategy at all?
to usefully access it.
Mm,
That's the trick. It's
yeah.
very easy to contain an AI in a box, in a way that it doesn't act on the world. You put it in the box, you don't give it manipulators, and then you close the box and leave. Um, and barring some really odd scenarios, you're now safe.
You have very
Problem
expensive
is,
box.
the problem is that what you have is, as you say, a very expensive box. You actually want, if you have an AI, you want to do something useful with it. And in a sense, you should do, because of all the sort of, we've mentioned the power of superintelligence.
Mm,
Once you align this with humans, then all the good you can do, all the problems you can solve in the world, like absolute poverty is the sort of thing you can solve. Relative poverty is maybe more tricky, but absolute poverty, yeah, that can be solved by this kind of intelligence. Many diseases potentially, various. Anyway, um, I just want to point out that we've been focusing on the negative, but the positive of the more the more powerful the AI, the more the outcome is fantastic or terrible, depending on whether it's aligned properly. As the AIs get weaker, then you get a more of a sort of range of outcomes. But for very powerful AI, it's basically fantastic or disastrous. But anyway, so to get back to using the AI, I attempted at one point to define what a low impact AI would do. the ideal of a low impact AI is, say, a robot. You tell them, make me a coffee. It walks to the kitchen. It makes you a coffee. It brings it back to you. Um, Despite being super intelligent, at no point does it do something extreme or on the way. If it turns out that there's no coffee available, it comes back and says, there's no coffee available. Do you want me to go to the shop and get it? Basically, that's for the sort of medium impact I was aiming for. It turns out I completely failed at defining that. I succeeded in defining very low impact, so a minute, almost insignificant impact, plus some cheats to get useful work out of it in various, or even even if I say so myself, various cunning ways. Um, so yeah, so the you you basically want it to not have a huge influence on the world, which is why you're in the box, but you want it to have a large influence on the world because that's what you're using it for. And it's very tricky to come up with some way of getting both of those. As I said, I managed to do very low impact plus cheating, um, but it's not, shall we say, the most elegant or simple of my work.
Right. So just to kind of end on there, because uh, well, ideally, I'd love to have you back sometime so we can continue this because this is really intriguing. Um, but
Oh, I
sorry.
forgot to mention an intermediate case.
Oh yes.
Um, if we get it to provide us with solutions to problems that we can check, um, then we might be able to make it safe as long as it's episodic. So if we get it to if we get it to factorize, I almost said factorize prime numbers, which is very easy to do, but factorize large composite numbers. Um, and if we if it doesn't transmit secret information through how long it takes or whether it gives us an answer or not, then we can just run the primes through a box that multiplies them, check that the answer is correct, and then show it to us. So for some narrow checkable things, we might be able to use super intelligent AIs. But even there, we have to take extra precautions, as I say, to make sure there's no back channels in or information that's leaking out of it.
Oh, this is a huge issue. I've done a little bit of cybersecurity stuff, and yeah, trying to identify all the side channels that might be used by a clever attacker. I wouldn't want to do it for a super intelligence attacker. Um, so yeah, what I wanted to kind of just end on very briefly is, as you just mentioned, we haven't really touched on the positives here, and I think that is worth considering because it's easy to um, just go, AI could be very powerful. It could do all of these terrible things. You know, it could not only wipe out our species, but give rise to all kind of suffering risks and all kinds of huge problems. But there's a reason why uh, pretty much nobody is just calling for an outright ban of it. And I think the biggest reason is that it could be really, really, really good. So just quickly, what kind of lovely things might a really powerful superintelligence be able to bring us?
Well, for a start, it could provide, say, a personal advisor for every single person on Earth, um, which could help us. As I say, first of all, it could do massive amount of manufacturing, production, building stuff, designing stuff, creating stuff that fills both our wants and our needs, um, advising us. To pick an example at random, I pretty confident that it could solve COVID-19 within a few days of being aware of the problem. It could figure out effectively who has it, what its characteristics were, and probably would. So again, this we're talking sort of more of the high end of
Mm,
intelligence, but that would be able to figure out what um, by simulation how to deal with this so efficiently breezing through the very slow process of vaccine research, for example, as well as identifying who might have it, doing a just enough quarantine to give enough probability of eradicating it entirely, that kind of stuff. So solving people's absolute material needs, solving people's mental illnesses. This is when I was talking about personal advisor. A personal advisor could be a personal psychiatrist.
mm.
Allowing people to develop their skills or develop their passions. Um, Pretty much, yeah. And most problems in the world today could be solvable in this way. Global warming, definitely.
Mm.
Um, I through well, through producing new technologies, through building solar captors in space, through decarbonizing the atmosphere, um, just those kind of interventions become feasible with these kind of hypothetical superintelligences. Um, if we're more towards the beginning of the interview, I could go on more about the positives there, but
Okay, how about we make that the subject of another appearance if you'd like to come back on sometime?
okay.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll leave it there so you can get some well-deserved rest. But thank you very much for coming on. This has been a really interesting conversation, and hopefully those of you out there in internet land will have learned a little something. And yeah, thanks a lot, Stuart.
Cool.
Is there anything you'd like to plug or shout about or anything like that?
Um, yeah, we're doing technical work on AI safety. It's useful, high expected positive value, and really quite interesting.
So, if you're interested in supporting that kind of work, there's the Effective Altruism Long Term Futures Fund, which provides grants to a lot of this kind of area. So, go donate to that because it's really good. So, yeah, thank you very much.
And if you're
And
interested in the research side, develop your skills there or get in contact with us, and we'll try and find. Uh, yeah, there's we lack a curriculum for this sort of thing for teaching it, but I think they're working on developing it. Anyway, I'll
okay,
stop rambling.
there you go.
Thank you.
Apply to the Future of Humanity Institute. They are always in need of good talent, and apply to Oxford because it's really lovely here. Uh, and there's the EA Long Term Future Fund on effectivealtruism.org. Highly recommended. Lovely stuff. All right. Well, you have a good evening, and I
And you.
will see you when I see you.
Hmm. See you on
Bye.
the other side of the pandemic.
Indeed, indeed. One day, one day. See you. End meeting. There we go. Okay. Right. Well, that was Stuart Armstrong. I am very sorry, everyone, for the. Oh, just bring up my. For the complete cock up on uh, getting the stream working earlier. Um, that was. So, what happened there was very stupid. Um, I I've recently got Restream working so I can broadcast on multiple different platforms at once, which is great. But some of my colleagues were testing it out earlier, and had sensibly, for the purposes of testing, they'd switched off all of the broadcast switches, so they were like recording but not broadcasting. And I forgot about that and didn't switch them back on. So we lost the first 15 minutes or so of the interview. Um, so if you came in expecting a introduction to what artificial intelligence is and so forth, and it suddenly kind of leapt in with a more detailed discussion, then that's entirely my fault, and I will try to get the video and post the whole thing properly um, on the page. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, um, and hopefully my next one will be a little bit smoother. Thank you, of course, to Dr. Stuart Armstrong for coming on, who's always worth a chat with. And yeah, on Wednesday, I have Aaron McCall coming in, who is a dear friend and a Democratic Party political operative based in California, who does a lot of cool grassroots stuff and is generally a lovely person. And we're going to be chatting about kind of the American election, the like presidential election, and the kind of down ballot races as well. And uh, generally probably complaining a lot about the terrifying nature of US politics currently. Um, so yeah, thank you very much. I will bid you adieu and see you on Wednesday. Well, I won't see you obviously because I'm looking at a camera and but you'll see me if you decide to tune in. So yeah, ta ta.